Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Foundry Hangout. My name is Kyle Gray, and today I'm here with Erik Paquet from theabroaders.com. He's a travel hacker and knows how to get around the world for pennies on the dime. Hey, Erik, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Kyle. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about theabroaders.com and kind of the service you provide?
Sure. So, Abroaders offers a done-for-you travel hacking service. We essentially manage your frequent flyer portfolio in the same way that your stockbroker would manage your investment accounts. And so we help folks be able to redeem their points for maximum value and be able to travel where they want. So the service would essentially ask you, where are you looking forward to traveling in the next 24 months? And then we manage your accounts and help you earn enough points to be able to get those trips. Typically the cost for international flights with award travel is around 150 to 300 bucks.
Okay, so that's pretty cool. So you can international travel instead of costing thousands of dollars, which is definitely the biggest obstacle for most people. You're working with them to figure out how to get it for $150. How did you get into this? Because this is I think it's not a very well known practice.
Yeah, it's kind of obscure, and I think that it sort of exists because of that. First of all, the frequent flyer programs are huge profit centers for the airlines, and mostly because of the complication. It can be really hard to redeem your miles. Lots of people let them expire. Lots of people don't know how. They get frustrated, and they'll end up redeeming, a bunch of miles for a toaster or a bicycle or something. They have all these other ways that you can spend them that are really low value. And so ultimately the miles game is working really well for the airlines. But if you know how to play the system, you can, the same amount of miles that could get you a really nice coffee maker can also get you a one-way international flight to South America. And so we're sort of in the business of helping people, realize those types of redemptions. And for me, I discovered it in college. I came across that miles could get me a ticket, and at that point, I really wanted to do a study abroad, and 1,500 bucks was prohibitively expensive for airfare. It looked like I wasn't going to be able to do it if I couldn't find a way to get there cheaper, and so it was kind of necessity fueled learning the skill set, and I kind of took it from there and continued to kind of do it as a hobby, and eventually it became something that I was doing full time.
That's really exciting. I did a couple of study abroads in my college career, and I also worked in a study abroad office as an advisor. And I wish I would have known about this as an opportunity to kind of share with a lot of the students, because it's very intimidating. But yeah, just to kind of spark some people's imagination, where are some of the places you've traveled using these skills?
Sure. So just this last year, I went to Brazil, spent about 6 months in Rio and Salvador in Brazil, and then also did a pretty close to basically around the world trip with my business partner. Our goal was to get to a conference in Bangkok for the Dynamite Circle, which is a online entrepreneurship community. And we were able to get a stopover in Europe. It's one of the really cool things about award tickets is often the way the rules are set up, if you do the right itinerary, you can really get a lot of extra value. And so in this case, we were able to stop in Europe for about a month and a half on the way to Asia, and it didn't increase the cost of our trip at all. So we stopped in Germany, did Oktoberfest, spent a little bit of time in Prague, and went to Berlin, and then carried on to Asia and spent about a month in Bangkok and Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. So those were the two big trips last year, and this year I'll be going back to Europe and Asia as well. So typically doing about 2 or 3 international trips a year.
That's really exciting, and you're traveling with a business partner, so you're keeping your costs really low on the airfare and the travel. But how are you making some of the money along the way that's financing your kind of small day-to-day expenses?
Sure. So I started out with entrepreneurship. Kind of the beginning of my journey was I started out, kind of in the model where I was working, trying to save money to travel. Worked, a summer or 6, 8 months, and then would go travel and blow all the money and come back home, totally broke again. And so the early on, I was just kind of started freelancing and working with web development and design, helping small small businesses build websites. So that was initially my first business, and still pays some of the bills to be able to sustain travel. It's a really good business to be in because it's easy to be location independent if you're working online. And so now, we've sort of transitioned that. We still do some work with our digital media agency, but I'm kind of transitioning to being full-time with this travel hacking service, and kind of trying to scale that, because I think that this is definitely going to be a much more exciting place to be over the next few years. And there's not so many people doing this. There's definitely a lot of web design and development companies out there.
Yeah. So talk about some of your challenges building out the abroaders.com. What have you faced, and what have you learned from turning this skill that's saving you money into a skill that's even making you money on top of that?
That's a really good question. So I think, probably to start, I wasn't thinking this as a business originally. I was thinking of this as a way to empower travel, kind of a means to the end of being able to use my location independence that I had achieved through having my online business to actually be able to be cool places, because it's no good to be independent if you're stuck in one place because of travel costs. So I started out doing that, and kind of realized that there was a demand out there, because friends and family members were always asking me, how are you doing this? Like, I know you're not making that much money. How are you going to Europe and Asia and South America this year? And so, as I started to try and help people, it became really obvious that most of the questions and most of the issues people were having getting started were very similar. There were just a few questions, a few obstacles that were preventing people from getting into this, and it became pretty easy for me to kind of standardize the responses that I was giving, and I realized that was something that could be scalable. And so we started building out, probably about 6 or 8 months ago, started building out some course materials to try and teach people how to do this. And we offered it, to friends and family for free for a little bit, and then started asking for money, and it really took off from there. We were able to get traction pretty quickly. As far as the challenges, I think that the hardest thing for me is I've been doing this for about 6 years now, and so it can be really easy to lose track of what it's like to not have the kind of level of familiarity. And so to be able to teach this to someone who's just starting out, it's really not that complicated. There's a lot of ways that you can get started with kind of a low amount of effort and input early on, but kind of taking what's in your head and simplifying it and trying to create a course material or create a system that's going to help other people get in is definitely a challenge, and it's been really fun to work with our customers and get feedback from people on what makes sense and what they need more help with.
That's great, and yeah, I've been working with you as well to get my start in this travel hacking. I've always loved to find any means I possibly could to get traveling around the world. And yeah, I agree with you where customer empathy is a very important part of what you do. It's just from what I've experienced so far, it's really intimidating. A lot of this involves credit cards, and just right now especially, there's a lot of debt going around in the United States, and credit cards can be kind of intimidating if you don't have the right mindset or the right approach. And so I think that's a cool lesson you've learned. Along the way, I know every good entrepreneur has at least one really great failure story, and I was hoping you could share some of your failures or missteps along the way of your entrepreneurial journey with us.
Sure. Well, I think a lot of the most spectacular ones were early on with our web agency, before we had really developed any sort of skill sets. I came into that knowing that I could sell websites pretty well without really knowing anything about how to make them. And so early on we started out sourcing to China and to India. And it was just a disaster in terms of communication, being able to pass through, our customers' requirements and have folks build those sites and get them back. So I think we learned a lot about building a team and about, the value and the amount of effort that goes into training and really setting up your processes correctly to deliver a good product. And I think a lot of that sort of paid off and filtered into what we're doing now. But mistakes happen all the time, and it's really easy to lose track, and you have to be sort of fortified to that, and know that
Mhm.
you're gonna mess things up on a daily basis, and to kind of go back and see where you made the error, and be open to getting that feedback from your customers, and that criticism, to be able to sort of make incremental improvements.
That's really cool. And I think what's interesting about what you're saying, I think a lot of that could be applied to entrepreneurship, but it could also be applied to travel in general. And you're a member of a growing number of people that are using business to facilitate travel and to explore around the world. What are some of the similarities you see between entrepreneurship and world travel? For me, they're becoming more and more aligned. And I'm wondering, with you in 6 years into it, how do you see it?
That's a really cool perspective, and I agree with you. I don't know that I've ever heard anybody really articulate it that way, but I think there are a lot of similarities. I think probably the most important thing is that both of them require constant learning. And I think that if you have that mindset, you're in a much better position to take advantage of opportunities. So, traveling, stuff gets messed up all the time. A flight gets delayed, something gets missed, you end up stranded someplace, you don't have a place to stay. The hotel or hostel you thought you were booked at doesn't have your reservation, and you're looking for someplace at 11 at night. I think there's a lot of parallels to those sorts of unexpected screw-ups that happen when you're traveling that also happen a lot in business.
Yeah.
And so, I think that the biggest takeaway for me from traveling has been to really try and plan for the unexpected, and not let a setback derail everything else. To know that those sorts of things happen, and to try and set up the architecture of your business to be resilient to that, and also the architecture of your travel plans. And so, I try not to depend too much on one place that I'm going to stay, or knowing that I'm going to be someplace by a certain date. If you kind of know that the chaos can come into your travel, you can work around that. And it's the same thing with business. You have to be ready for the unexpected, and try and just go with the flow, and make adjustments as things happen.
I think that's great advice. Okay, well, that covers a lot of what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I just wanted to open it up to you to see if you have any other pieces of advice for somebody who's new to entrepreneurship or new to travel, and what would you leave somebody with who wants to get started travel hacking, or wants to get starting their own business?
Sure. Well, I think with respect to travel hacking, the barrier to entry, it feels like it's really complicated, and if you start looking without any guidance, you're just it's really easy, I think, to see all this stuff about credit card signups, and worry about your credit score and how complicated it's going to be to redeem, and to just inaction, to not do anything. And I think that happens a ton in business as well. As somebody's got a great idea for a startup or a service that they could provide, but there's so many different things to do that they don't know where to start, and they don't take action at all because it's just sort of overwhelming. And so I think that the biggest piece of advice is to not try and get everything perfect, to realize that you don't have to understand or know everything right away, that you need to be taking a step every single day towards your goal. And so if that's travel hacking, start to educate yourself. There's tons of free information on the internet. Abroaders.com, we're building free resources, and also have a podcast that's out there for folks to be able to learn about this. But whatever your area of interest, take those steps to start to educate yourself, and take action to build the business or get towards your objective every day, because the longer you stay put, just sort of overwhelmed by all the opportunity that's out there, the further behind you're going to get.
That's fantastic. I guess maybe one more question, since we just mentioned your podcast, and I've really been enjoying the podcast, listening to it myself, and it was really encouraging to hear all this information and see what it was possible. And now I'm curious. I just wanted to hear how you're using is content marketing your main way of how you're building this out, and how's that working for you? How's the podcast paying off?
So the podcast has been an awesome experience. I wouldn't say necessarily from a content or audience perspective just yet. We're not really super focused on growing our audience or trying to bring on a ton of new customers. Right now, we're really focused on building the quality of the product. We want to make sure that this service is really good and delivers huge return on investment for people. So we're not super fixated on getting a whole bunch of new people. But the podcast has been great because it's helping me to learn to be a better speaker, to really think about the ways that you need to break down information to present it in a way that's going to make sense to someone who's not familiar with it. And so it's really forced me to be more granular about how I think about and more organized about how I think about travel hacking. To me, it was all just a big jumble of stuff up in my head that I kind of knew how to navigate. And when I had to present it as information to an audience that had maybe never heard of it before, it became a really great project of organization to sort of break things down and figure out what we should talk about. And the feedback from the users has been really cool too. We've got a lot of listeners that send in questions by email or send us something via Twitter. And it's really cool to hear back from people and say, I found this really useful. I took a page of notes, but you totally didn't go over this, or what you talked about made no sense. So it's a humbling and a good learning experience for sure.
Well, awesome, Erik. Thanks so much for your time, and I appreciate you sharing a lot of this knowledge with us. Again, I invite everybody to check out theabroaders.com if they want to learn a little bit more, and let us know if you have a stopover in Utah and come visit us at the Foundry.
Definitely. By the way, it's just abroaders.com. No the in the front of the URL. But
thank you for the correction.
Yeah, no worries.
And we'll have the link up in the show notes. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon, Erik.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle.